I've always sort of hated Dark Lord ever since he released publicly for EXP. Most of my hate generally went towards his combo game, moveset, and damage output. So going into creating this video, I thought it would mainly be more of a rant video about how his kit sucks and the awful balanced direction that was taken for his character. However, after doing some research on his kit, I can say he is one of the most interesting characters in the game, and definitely is the best example of a hyper-aggressive rushdown character UCDR has to offer so far. However, that's mainly where my praise ends for him. Dark Lord as he stands right now is probably the most annoying, overpowered character to deal with at the moment. Where my praise comes from is Dark Lord's design in theory, rather than the actual practice and execution of his kit. To show you more of what I mean, I'm going to summarize his kit so you can sort of get a feel for how he plays, and mainly how he could be one of the coolest characters in the roster. A lot of the information provided is going to be summarized or shortened about his kit due to just how much stuff this guy has. He has 4 entire different Trello pages worth of information right now. I will also be linking the timestamps for each section if you just want to jump into a certain aspect of the video. Dark Lord spawns in with about 75 HP. He's on the higher end of stamina and mana regen, being able to run for 8.5 seconds and only needing 4.5 seconds to regen all of his stamina or mana. Dark Lord has one passive to him, which is the ability to fly by pressing space twice. I'll put all the info onto the screen, but I'll summarize it if you're watching this in the background. Going too far up will automatically cancel flight. This also occurs if you're too close to the ground. Holding S before pressing W will make you fly 3 times faster. Flight also consumes stamina very quickly. He has about 21 moves in total if you include LMB and RMB in his unbanded form. Most of these moves are melee moves, with about 3 projectile moves in total, which one of those are his ultimate. The rest of his moves either stem from his martial arts moves or are part of his base kit. That being said, during unbanded, some of his moves are unclashable with other projectiles due to how they were coded. This is because every other projectile always has an active hitbox you can clash with your own move. If you take a look at the footage, you can notice that Dark Lord's Fireball does not have an active hitbox until it hits the ground. Dark Lord's ultimate is nothing that special. It's simply just a large AoE that's easily cancelable or dodgeable if you roll at the right moment. Moving on to Dark Lord Bandit though, which is mainly the juice and butter of his kit. Dark Lord keeps the same amount of HP and stamina regen, however his run speed is increased to 40. His entire moveset pretty much gets an entire overhaul. He also gets one new passive. This passive is called Superhero Landing. I really don't know who's naming these. Like, first it's Friendly Flower, what? But anyway. This is activated if Dark Lord has fallen a considerable distance behind an enemy. A special cutscene will play afterwards. I'm not sure why this is in the game. He has a whopping 32 moves total in this phase, including LMB and Air LMB variants. I say LMB variants because you can actually activate a different type of variant by just using Air LMB while in normal mode. His Air LMB and RMB are also changed while in martial arts mode. You can also activate the variant on normal mode by just pressing Z instead. I'm going to quickly go over all of his notable moves in Bandit before we move on to Dark Lord viruses. Dark Lord RMB. This move allows Dark Lord to launch himself extremely quickly diagonally into the air, literally just Sukuna's RMB. Normal 1. Dark Lord jumps into the air before firing a fireball. This projectile is shot extremely quickly upon firing, but you have a fair amount of time to react to it before it fires. Normal 5 and Air 5 summons a bunch of projectiles that have a normal amount of tracking. Normal 6, they're anti-air, does an insane amount of damage, however requires 2 heat and has considerable windup. Air LMB will do a few slashes in the air, will not hurt the opponent, however it does shred any projectile HP. Air 6. Dark Lord charges towards the opponent after a small windup. This attack is nearly unavoidable, so you're pretty much forced to block this. This move will also activate a cutscene and instantly kill you if you're in the execution range. Martial Arts 2. Dark Lord sweeps his legs, knocking the opponent away. Does not deal any damage, however has a variant. This variant is activated whenever the opponent is blocking, which basically auto-breaks blocks and stuns the user. Also, this has a second variant, which is the A/D variant. Dark Lord flips around into a kick, much like Sukuna's normal LMB. This is blockable and cannot hit knocked down. Martial Arts Air 2, Banded. Dark Lords will do a rapid amount of kicks and punches. However, this move is only activated using momentum from his flight. Dark Lord Martial Arts Air 4, Dark Lord drops down on the enemy before grabbing them by the neck and tossing them away. This is only activated if Dark Lord has height on the opponent. It is unblockable and won't activate until you've actually landed on the ground. Lower cooldown if whiffed. Finally, by pressing 9 with 3 heat, you'll activate your third moveset called Viruses. It's also how he gets his Firebots. Dark Lord will float in the air for a few seconds before 10 Firebots are summoned. The rest of his moves are simple action or combo moves. Moving on to Dark Lord Viruses, Dark Lord has one additional passive in this phase, which is the Anti-Teaming. If you're locked onto someone else and you get hit by a third party, the Firebots will attack the third party for 10 seconds. Finally, his mana is reduced to only 70% of his original amount. Also worth mentioning that Dark Lord has 40 moves in total while he has Viruses! The unique thing about Firebots is that they can attack you while you're using other moves, which can be extremely annoying to deal with if you're the opponent. There's no confirmed HP for Firebots anywhere I could find, but based on my experience, they most likely have anywhere between 2 to 5 HP. They will also tank projectiles for Dark Lord if they're in the way. By pressing 1 on Viruses, the Firebots will jump out at the opponent and will attack more frequently for a short period of time. This move is also done passively if you're locked onto someone. Viruses 2 and 3 are simple manual moves, with with Firebots 4 being the Firebots jumping into the air before firing projectiles. Finally, his Virus 5 allows you to control a Firebot. This would be useless if not for the fact that the opponent is forced to lock onto the bot until you stop using it or the Firebot is killed. He can basically use every single move I've talked about in this section as a Firebot when manually controlling viruses. Alright, this section will mainly be about my opinion on the character rather than factual information about his skin. Dark Lord could have been one of the most well-designed characters in UCDR due to his fast-paced nature. I think it's really interesting to see a character that has moves unlocked depending on a large factor of things, as it gives him more options and responses to certain scenarios. Not only that, but Dark Lord is slightly dependent on momentum and is overall a fast-paced character, which is super cool to see since we actually don't have a lot of characters like that. That being said, right now his design is questionable to say the least. Some of the stuff feels like the owner just threw stuff at the wall and hope it sticked. I don't actually think the entire reason of him being way too overpowered is due to how he's balanced, but more so due to the core functionality of their moves. For example, take Dark Lord LMD. This move pretty much consumes any projectile, so any character that relies on delayed or slowed projectiles will automatically suffer majorly from this fight alone. If you watch the background footage, you've probably noticed every time I threw a setup projectile, it was instantly denied by this one move alone. Another example of this is his Firebots. A lot of the time when fighting a Dark Lord with the Firebots, you'll notice at least a couple of moves of yours get cancelled due to a single Firebot using a micro-stun move, which can often limit your ability to throw out attacks and overall make fighting him less enjoyable. Not only this, but again, his bots can tank the damage for him if they're in the way of when a projectile is thrown. If the bots have at least 2 minimum health each, that's 20 health worth of projectiles that could be consumed over the fight. Here's some other unrelated problems regarding the core functionality of his moves though. Some of his moves, mainly the dark red spikes, are extremely unfair, in regards that they're barely dodgeable if they're launched at a small distance due to their homing. No other character has homing projectiles like this. Also, some of his moves will have a shorter cooldown if you whiff them, which shouldn't be a thing considering he has 40 total moves! I get it for Flowey, but for Flowey it was already a stretch, so what excuse does Dark Lord have when Flowey only has like 9 total moves? I feel like this is worth bringing up. He has insane combo potential. I'm not going to elaborate on this, just look at this clip. Some of his moves have a lot of questionable hitboxes like Dark Lord 3, where he can roll, but since it has 3 different hitboxes, it can change directions and still hit you. There's also projectiles like its normal one unbanned, which you literally cannot clash with at all. Even Perseverance can't save you from that move unless you perfectly time it. which I've done like once. I feel like I should be pretty proud of myself. Finally, you're literally forced to stop attacking Dark Lord if he uses fire bots until you unlock or he gives up using it. This is just a handful of questionable balancing, but a lot of them feel awful to go even against on their own. I want to repeat that I'm not saying Dark Lord is unbalanced only because of the core functionality of his moves, it's also because of the balancing regarding the moves. For example, Air 6 does 1.6 chip damage. As I've said earlier, this move is undodgeable most of the time without blocking, so you are forced to take damage. There's a lot of these questionable balancing on moves sprinkled throughout his kit, however I'll let you look through that in your own time, as I mainly want to talk about the direct root of the cause, which is his core functionality, and I also don't want this video to be any longer than it needs to be. As you've seen me talk about this a handful of times throughout the video, I briefly mentioned that his playstyle is hyper-aggressive and is also momentum-based, which is insanely cool from a concept perspective if you take these two things and mash them together. Unfortunately, Dark Lord also plays as a summoner, which heavily interrupts the flow of the combat. You can see how much of an issue this is in practice. When Dark Lord uses his minions, they're often interrupted from using a move and punished just because he has minions that deal micro-stun. So this often leads to this awkward flow of combat for when you prepare for a counterattack only for it to be interrupted. Minions by themselves aren't a bad idea. However, it's a micro-stun and the fact he plays super aggressive that becomes the problem. If you get micro-stun during a move, you're pretty much guaranteed to be thrown into a combo if you don't have a backup move due to just how aggressive he can be. And if we're talking balance in practice, it's pretty awful due to the reasons I just went over last section. Again, my main praise is how he's essentially the potential man of UCDR, not strength-wise, but based off of how fun he could be to fight if he was just done a little differently. This is going to be very short since there is many suggestions that you can look at for Dark Lord's balancing if you want a main direction. I'm going to go point by point on what I think needs to be changed or of stuff we've previously talked about. 1. Firebots will no longer deal any sort of stun, just damage. 2. Firebots 5 will no longer forcibly make the opponent lock onto you, or just get rid of it if this makes it useless. 3. Dark Lord's homing hitboxes on 5 and Air 5 are nerfed so they're dodgeable at close range. 4. Firebots will no longer tank projectiles. Instead, the projectile will fire as normal, and if it hits them through, it will pierce through them. 5. Adjust Air LMD in some way that doesn't make it so he can't automatically deny any sort of slow projectile. Or just remove it, either works. 6. Remove any sort of cooldown reduction if a move is moved. He has 21 moves at minimum and 40 at maximum. There should be no reason why he has a cooldown reduction if he whiffs a move. These small changes, in my opinion, would make it a lot more enjoyable to fight against Dark Lord viruses alone. Or just any part of his kit. I've pretty much gone over about nearly everything I wanted to say about him, so I'll keep this short. In theory, his playstyle could be really cool, but the execution is horrible, not to mention him being a sub-summoner, which just doesn't work. He also has a ton of design flaws that need to be adjusted for this guy to be more balanced and more enjoyable to play against. With all that said, this truly was the reason why Dark Lord could sorta be awesome, but why you should hate him. Also, subscribe, like, comment, definitely comment and like, comment, like, I want algorithm boost. I want algorithm boost, give me, like, comment, subscribe. Also, if the owner is watching this, please give me pacifist. I want it.